Okay, let's now go back to the delay of the election idea that was floated. Months ago, Joe Biden said that he believed Donald Trump was going to try to create some kind of emergency as a pretext to delay the election. And a whole bunch of people said, oh, Joe Biden's crazy. Trump's not going to do that. And then last week, Donald Trump floated the idea on Twitter of delaying the election and has since insisted at every opportunity that this is going to be a rigged, phony election. A top Democratic congressman in the House now specifically says that Donald Trump is going to use emergency powers to remain in the White House if he loses the election. So this idea is not about delaying the election. It's about declaring an emergency if he loses to not vacate the White House. Now, I'm talking here about House Majority Whip Congressman James Clyburn. This is probably the strongest reaction from an actual federal lawmaker so far, saying Trump's idea is to put a cloud over the election and then use some kind of an emergency to justify staying in the Oval Office. Here is Congressman Clyburn himself on CNN Sunday.
Do you really think Donald Trump is comparable to Adolf Hitler?
What I said started about 2.5, maybe 3 years ago after one of his State of the Unions, that I feel very strongly that this man has taken on a strong arm tactics. And I feel very strongly that he is Mussolini, Putin is Hitler. I said that back then, and I believe that. I believe very strongly that this guy never had any idea about being one to peacefully transfer power. I don't think he plans to leave the White House. He doesn't plan to have fair and unfettered elections. I believe that he plans to install himself in some kind of emergency way to continue to hold on to office. And that's why the American people had better wake up.
Now, you know, there are people who are not particularly pleased with Clyburn, especially because he's mentioning, you know, Mussolini and Hitler in the same breath as Trump. For me, what's lacking is a more detailed explanation about how exactly Trump plans to do it. And so absent a specific plan, I still don't see this as something that Donald Trump could actually get away with. But understand that this is a different idea than delaying the election. Delaying the election is what Trump floated last week. The idea here is Trump loses, but then uses some kind of emergency declaration to try to stay in power. So a few different things. Number one, even Republicans are saying all of these ideas are bogus. Marco Rubio saying, you know, Trump can suggest delaying the election, but that's not what's going to happen. I think that there's actually a point where the idea of debating this is arguably the problem. And let me explain to you what I mean. When you bring on experts, politicians, whoever, to argue about, can Trump delay the election? Could he use an emergency to stay in power or whatever? You are legitimizing the idea of this as a concept. And what I mean by that is the real newsworthiness of this story is the wildly authoritarian, completely unhinged idea of delaying the election. That's what needs to be reported on. When you bring in a member of Congress or a legal expert and say, could Trump do this? Or how could Trump do this? Or is Trump doing this justified? You are creating the notion that there's something to debate here. I do a bit of a different type of show than what you see on corporate media. So I've pointed out Trump can't really do this. States run their own elections. You need at the federal level some kind of decree from the House and Senate, which you're not going to get. But the focus of this story needs to be on corporate media that Donald Trump is alluding to something completely authoritarian and dictatorial. It is the idea of something that despots do. And normalizing this idea of a delay or staying in power is almost saying it could be justified. If there is a debate as to whether Trump would have the legal authority to do this, it validates what should be a completely immediately dismissed authoritarian idea. That's my concern about some of these types of segments. So I'm curious to hear from you about that. Let me know what you think.